A federal appeals court on Friday ruled in favor of a Texas law targeting social media on censorship. The law, which was passed last year, bans social media platforms with more than 50 million monthly users from removing a user or post based on viewpoints. The law would also require them to report information about content removal. Opponents of the law have stated it would stifle the ability of social media companies to remove graphic content, hate speech, and dangerous misinformation. The Supreme Court originally placed an injunction on the law as it went through the court system, but now it is expected to go back there for a final verdict. Next, California is suing Amazon as it says it is violating the state's antitrust and unfair competition laws. In a lawsuit filed last week, California accused Amazon of stifling competition and engaging in practices to make sellers maintain lower prices on Amazon's site compared to other sites. California says that the lawsuit is based on information that was collected over the course of 2 years, involving subpoenas and interviews with sellers and Amazon's competitors. The suit says that merchants that do not comply with Amazon's policy could have their products removed from prominent listings on Amazon. At its core, the lawsuit seeks to stop the anti-competitive practices that Amazon partakes in, according to California. So it will be interesting to see how this all plays out. In other news, General Motors said it would spend $491 million to upgrade an Indiana plant for production of parts for electric vehicles. GM said it would install 2 new press lines to a 6,000 square foot plant in Marion, Indiana. The plant currently now employs around 750 people, and that employment is expected to remain stable throughout this. This new renovation comes as GM is trying to strengthen its hold in the electric vehicle market. However, the plant would still be providing parts for its Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, and Cadillac models, in addition to parts for EVs. Next, Samsung Electronics has announced that it plans on attaining 100% clean energy by 2050. Samsung is the second biggest energy consumer, only behind Walmart. It announced that it aims to achieve net zero carbon emissions across its mobile, TV, and consumer electronics divisions by 2030, and net zero carbon emissions across all global operations by 2050. Last year, Samsung used 25.8 terawatt hours of electricity for its operations, which is nearly twice the amount of energy consumed by all the households in South Korea's capital. This being said, Samsung has acknowledged it would have a harder time converting renewable energy sources at home, as it struggles to achieve the electricity demands needed to keep up with the growing demand for semiconductors. Next, a hacker claiming to be behind Uber's hacking incident last week gained access to Rockstar's game's Slack server, as well as its team working Confluence wiki. Additionally, the hacker also stated that they gained access to Grand Theft Auto 6 source code. For proof, the hacker uploaded a file containing 90 videos of the game. Rockstar has since confirmed the hacking incident by saying they suffered a network intrusion over the weekend. As of right now, the full details of the intrusion are slim, but according to some reports, the hacker seems to be demanding money for not publishing the source code of the game. On DevOps.com, we have an article announcing that the DevOps Dozen Awards for 2022 are now open. These awards highlight, recognize, and honor the outstanding leaders who have made an important contribution to the DevOps community over the past year. To learn more about the awards and how to nominate someone, go to DevOps.com. On Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at how, as the increase in software as a service applications has occurred, so has the increase in complexity and security risks. From a recent survey which focused on SaaS usage across enterprises, most organizations reported that security lagged in urgency and priority. Additionally, 60% of the respondents ranked SaaS security 4th or lower in their list of priorities. To learn more about the report and its implications, go to securityboulevard.com. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article looking at Weaveworks' update for its GitOps platform that enables application development teams to progressively deploy applications. This new update allows teams to deploy applications in a way that makes it easier to recover if there is an issue. The new update also enables teams to more actively enforce security at multiple points throughout the software lifecycle. To learn more about the new Weaveworks update, go to containerjournal.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap. again, everyone. Here are the headlines for September 20th. First up, a federal appeals court on Friday ruled in favor of a Texas law targeting social media on censorship. The law, which was passed last year, bans social media platforms with more than 50 million monthly users from removing a user or post based on viewpoints. The law would also require them to report information about content removal. Opponents of the law have stated it would stifle the ability of social media companies to remove graphic content, hate speech, and dangerous misinformation. The Supreme Court originally placed an injunction on the law as it went through the court system, but now it is expected to go back there for a final verdict. Next, California is suing Amazon as it says it is violating the state's antitrust and unfair competition laws. In a lawsuit filed last week, California accused Amazon of stifling competition and engaging in practices to make sellers maintain lower prices on Amazon's site compared to other sites. California says that the lawsuit is based on information that was collected over the course of 2 years, involving subpoenas and interviews with sellers and Amazon's competitors. The suit says that merchants that do not comply with Amazon's policy could have their products removed from prominent listings on Amazon. At its core, the lawsuit seeks to stop the anti-competitive practices that Amazon partakes in, according to California. So it will be interesting to see how this all plays out. In other news, General Motors said it would spend $491 million to upgrade an Indiana plant for production of parts for electric vehicles. GM said it would install 2 new press lines to a 6,000 square foot plant in Marion, Indiana. The plant currently now employs around 750 people, and that employment is expected to remain stable throughout this. This new renovation comes as GM is trying to strengthen its hold in the electric vehicle market. However, the plant would still be providing parts for its Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, and Cadillac models, in addition to parts for EVs. Next, Samsung Electronics has announced that it plans on attaining 100% clean energy by 2050. Samsung is the second biggest energy consumer, only behind Walmart. It announced that it aims to achieve net zero carbon emissions across its mobile, TV, and consumer electronics divisions by 2030, and net zero carbon emissions across all global operations by 2050. Last year, Samsung used 25.8 terawatt hours of electricity for its operations, which is nearly twice the amount of energy consumed by all the households in South Korea's capital. This being said, Samsung has acknowledged it would have a harder time converting renewable energy sources at home, as it struggles to achieve the electricity demands needed to keep up with the growing demand for semiconductors. Next, a hacker claiming to be behind Uber's hacking incident last week gained access to Rockstar's game's Slack server, as well as its team working Confluence wiki. Additionally, the hacker also stated that they gained access to Grand Theft Auto 6 source code. For proof, the hacker uploaded a file containing 90 videos of the game. Rockstar has since confirmed the hacking incident by saying they suffered a network intrusion over the weekend. As of right now, the full details of the intrusion are slim, but according to some reports, the hacker seems to be demanding money for not publishing the source code of the game. On DevOps.com, we have an article announcing that the DevOps Dozen Awards for 2022 are now open. These awards highlight, recognize, and honor the outstanding leaders who have made an important contribution to the DevOps community over the past year. To learn more about the awards and how to nominate someone, go to DevOps.com. On Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at how, as the increase in software as a service applications has occurred, so has the increase in complexity and security risks. From a recent survey which focused on SaaS usage across enterprises, most organizations reported that security lagged in urgency and priority. Additionally, 60% of the respondents ranked SaaS security 4th or lower in their list of priorities. To learn more about the report and its implications, go to securityboulevard.com. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article looking at Weaveworks' update for its GitOps platform that enables application development teams to progressively deploy applications. This new update allows teams to deploy applications in a way that makes it easier to recover if there is an issue. The new update also enables teams to more actively enforce security at multiple points throughout the software lifecycle. To learn more about the new Weaveworks update, go to containerjournal.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here on another Techstrong TV segment. I'm really happy to have my friend Matthias Madu, CTO co-founder of Secure Code Warrior, here on Techstrong with us. You know, usually I see Matthias, whether it's at RSA or maybe a KubeCon or some conference in person. We don't get a chance to get him on here on Techstrong TV often enough. Matthias, it's good to see you. I hope all is well.
All is well, and thanks so much for having me, Alan.
It's a pleasure. You know, Matthias, you and I know each other. I know the Secure Code Warrior story, but there are people out here who don't, I'm sure. You know, before we jump into what we want to talk about today, would you mind giving them maybe a quick background on Secure Code Warrior?
Oh, absolutely. So what we're trying to achieve with Secure Code Warrior is we want to be there for the developer when he or she writes code. We want to be there so that he or she can actually write secure code. And the way we do that is by making sure that the developers get actionable results in the language and the framework of what they're using on a day-to-day basis. So if they're using Java EE, we make sure they can code securely in Java EE. And we do that through training and through various other solutions.
Excellent. And you know, look, DevSecOps is somewhat in vogue today, and the idea of creating security tools that are developer-friendly and security and developer teams working together. But really, Secure Code Warrior was out here doing this before it was cool, certainly. Matthias, how long have you been at Secure Code Warrior?
7 years, and you're exactly right. Back in the day, 7 years ago, there was video training and kind of boring stuff where you didn't learn much. And the way we try to differentiate is really be language and framework specific. That's key in here. And it's hands-on training. So it's not clicking through a slideshow or a video, but it's really looking at code that you're hopefully familiar with, and hopefully we're able to guide you in writing more secure code in the language and framework of your choice.
Absolutely, and I remember those days. I remember interviewing you back then about it. So the other thing about 7 years ago and 8 years ago, Matthias, was that it wasn't just a question of what the technology or the tools were. There was fundamentally a question of security. Whose job is it anyway, right? How much security did the developer really have to worry about, or what should be their responsibility? Was developing secure code as important as just developing quantities of code, right? And other features. And, you know, in that regard, you know, you want to call that cultural, maybe. In that regard, we've really seen things change over the last 7 years.
Correct. And so I'll be honest, maybe I was part of the problem 7 years ago, because 7 years ago I worked a lot on static analysis solutions, and the people that were operating static analysis solutions back in the day, 7-10 years ago, they were really good at finding problems. They ran those scans and they threw them over the wall to developers, and they ran as fast as they could because they knew there was plenty of problems and it was going to be hard to resolve them. But I think we've came a long way since that day.
Absolutely. But you know, you brought this up. I was involved in a conversation with Andy Ellis, used to be Chief Security Officer at Akamai for so long. And, you know, today, when you're a developer, you're not only worried about the static analysis, but you have dynamic analysis and IAS and software composition analysis. And it seems like every vendor is coming out with their own new analysis. And all of this is being pitched back now to developers saying, hey, you gotta fix this, or you know, this is not secure. And it's they've barely gotten their head around doing security, and we seem to be overwhelming them with all of these alphabet soup kind of analysis, code and scanning and so forth. What do you think about that?
Well, I have a little secret here. Well, we still need the people. So we cannot throw as many tools as possible to the problem and hope it's going to resolve itself because, oh my God, it's still people that need to operate these tools. But more importantly, it's people that need to look at those results and actually fix the code. That is the most important problem. It does not matter how many acronyms we throw at the problem. If we find 1,000 problems and we're fixing 0, we didn't do anything essentially. So it's all up to, we need the developers. Let's be real here. Security can point out the problem. These days, I see more and more AppSec people that know how to code, which is a really good start because now they can actually help the developer. But it's still the developer that owns the code, that can make changes to the code. So we really, really need to get the developers on board with security. And back to what I initially said, we cannot do that the way we did that 10 years ago. We cannot throw the problem over the wall and then run as fast as we can as security people. We need to do it differently. And the way I think we can do this differently is a couple things. AppSec, first of all, they do need to understand coding. If they do not understand coding, it's going to be really, really hard. They need to bring the developers on the journey. And by the way, it's not only security that needs to change. The developers need to understand that the world has changed as well. Management teams, the organization itself requires developers to write secure code. We're in this new world where, subpar code is no longer acceptable in cars and all the things that we use on a day-to-day basis. So we really need to bring the developers on board and make sure that they are able to write secure code. And, we need to do that in a scalable way because right now there's roughly 2 application security people per 100 developers. That does not scale. So we really need to empower the developers. We need to make sure they have the knowledge, the skill to write secure code from the start, or also, if problems are thrown over the wall to the developers, that they understand why this is a problem and they're able to fix that particular problem.
Agreed. That statistic of 2 security folks, AppSec, whatever folks, per 100 developers, I mean, it hits home. Right? I mean, it gives you an idea of the scale of the issue and why, unless we're going to make these developers security champions,
correct.
We're just never going to get anywhere, right? We're never going to fix this problem. And that, of course, again, as you mentioned, it gets us away necessarily from that tools discussion. What tools do you want to use and stuff like that? And you realize it really becomes a cultural discussion, right?
Absolutely.
And that's something I know Secure Code Warrior, spends a lot of their training and time and educating, the base with that. Talk to us. How do you affect that culture, Matthias?
Yeah, so actually there are a lot of different ways to influence that culture. First of all, every organization is different. They're not all special snowflakes. There's groups of organizations where sometimes it is a board member that asks like, hey, what do you do for security for all your developers? So sometimes it is really top down. Sometimes it's bottom up. Sometimes it's developers that want to do the right thing and they see security as a subset of quality, which I think is correct. If you write qualitative code, it should also be secure. I think both need to be in line with each other. It's not a top-down approach. It's not a bottom-up approach. It's a holistic approach where the management, the executives, the board needs to be on board, but also where the developers hold the responsibility of, hey, we really want to do the right thing, and not say, you know what, today time is up. I need to ship code. I know it has a problem, but I'm still going to do it. We still see today that over 60% of the developers that we asked, they say, well, you know what, sometimes I still ship code which has a problem, which has a security problem. So to me, how do we influence that? First of all, the developer, we make them aware that, well, a security knowledgeable developer is, to me, a really good developer. And there's a good reason why. I think if you start coding, you make syntactical mistakes. Once you're over that, Java lines end with a semicolon. Once you're over that particular hurdle, you know how code interacts with each other. There are functions and files. Then you go to architecture. And at the end of the journey, you start to realize, oh my God, there's like hidden functionality in my code, which has security implications. So to me, it's important that a developer understands that a security savvy developer is equal to me as a good developer. So if they want to be seen as a top-notch developer, well, for sure, they need to know about security. So an education part on the developer side. At the same time, there's an education part on managers, on executives. If they are not given time, if the deadline is always yesterday, it's not going to happen. They will not be able to write secure code. They will not be able to upskill themselves. So you can work both ways. Sprinkle on top of that a couple of prizes, a little bit of gamification to make it interesting for both parties. And I think that's a really good mix to move forward and get the entire organization on the journey.
Agreed. Let's talk about, we're coming into September. It's almost the end of September. Matthias, look, I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat things and say everything's wonderful, but we've made a lot of progress. I think in some ways working remotely has made people, maybe it's between that and all the security incidents we've had, but it's made people more security conscious, right?
Correct.
And not just the security people, they were always security conscious, but the developers, the QA folks, the SREs, everyone, up and down the stack. What do you see as Secure Code Warriors' kind of mission now? To and not capitalize, but this is a good time to bring the spread the word.
So first of all, I agree 100%. I think we've made a couple good steps forward. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure what to say here, the market also requires this huge step forward because more and more solutions came online, and because of the homework, because of people were the whole lockdown issue, people had to work from home. They were required to rely more on tools, and new solutions came out. So also the software has made drastic steps forward in everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. So we made progress, but also there's more code that needs to be secured. So I'm not sure how much progress we've made in the end. To answer your question, our mission, our vision is we really want to be there for the developer. We estimate that there's roughly 20 million developers on planet Earth. We're a long way from that particular number. We have over a good 300,000 of developers on our platform, but not the 20 million that people predict. So what we really want to do is go after really huge organizations, because we offer our solution in a lot of different languages and frameworks, so it scales very well. So we really want to go after organizations, huge organizations, so we can help them. So we can actually make a dent in this market, and we can also push this forward in radical steps. So we prefer not to go after the 10 or 20 developers. We prefer to go after the 10,000, 100,000 developers, because then we can help at scale. We can help these organizations at scale, rolling a solution out at scale, and help 10,000, 100,000 developers at once instead of trying to do like in-person training, 10 people at a time.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the real beauty of online, right? Because think about it, you're going to fill a stadium up with people, to do this. It's not, that doesn't work.
No.
If it's going to be scalable, it has to be online. For people who want to get more information, where can they go?
Absolutely. They can get more information on www.securecodewarrior.com. They can always reach out to me or Peter via LinkedIn. We have a Twitter handle as well, SecCodeWarrior. That's, I think, the easiest way to get in touch with us.
Absolutely. Also, look, people are starting to go back to in-person events again and meeting. Are you guys going to be anywhere coming up? Maybe KubeCon or something like that?
We have people attending pretty much all these events. We're lucky that we're growing fairly rapidly, which means we have more and more people all around the world. So we're able to go to a lot of events these days. I'll be honest, our focus is still the RSA conference and the Black Hat conference, of course. But yes, so you can actually find us at these various conferences. There's always somebody from Secure Code. Look for the shirt. Look for the shirt. And
always the shirt with the logo. I've had
always the shirt
actually,
with the logo.
RSA, I think call for papers is next week.
I saw some communication floating by that. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we're always there doing our DevSecOps event. So hopefully we'll be there this year as well. Anyway, hey, Matthias, it's great seeing you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Don't be a stranger, because RSA is not till next April, I think.
It's fast. It always comes up really fast.
Well, yeah. It's been moving on us, but come back on here and talk to us more.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. Appreciate the invite. I'll definitely do.
All righty. Matthias Madhu, co-founder, CTO, Secure Code Warrior here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV segment. I am happy to be joined by Peter Pizarros of New Relic here on Techstrong TV. It's always great having our friends at New Relic on. Hey Peter, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thanks very much for having me.
All right. So Peter, before we even get started, is that a keyboard I see behind you?
It is. I like to dabble in the piano. I wish I had time to play it more. I've been a struggling, aspiring musician my entire life, but not really good at it.
Aren't we all? But look, we're not going to put you on the spot and make you play anything today. But why, beyond being a struggling keyboardist, why don't you give us a little bit of your background? And maybe, you know what, for those out here who are not as familiar with New Relic as maybe I am, a little background on the company as well.
Sure. Well, let me start with the company. New Relic is a leader in observability, and our goal is to help every engineer do their best work using data, not opinions, in everything they do. So every stage of their software development lifecycle. And the way that we do that is by surfacing production telemetry in different experiences. So you can see how your systems are performing and take that important data and act on it using data-driven decisions. I joined the company a little over a year ago through an acquisition of my company called CodeStream. And in my history, I've sort of been a serial entrepreneur. So prior to CodeStream, I had 3 other companies that I founded, built, and sold.
Excellent. Yeah, I have a similar background myself. Peter, look, I've been doing DevOps.com, one of the flagship brands here at Techstrong, for 8 years now. And New Relic was a player when we started. Back then we didn't call it observability. We had names like APM and stuff like that. And it's been a player all along. And as the technology has changed and things have changed, we've seen it change. That being said, they've certainly kept up with the whole observability movement, which has kind of changed that whole, whether you called it AI ops or APM, as I mentioned, or what have you. It's really it seems the industry is gelled around observability now as the thing here. Let's talk a little bit about where you guys see this coming from.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of change. You're right in calling out that there's been a lot of change in the industry, whether it's the terms we're using to describe it or the scope of what observability is today. And in order to understand that change and really what customers are doing today, we are releasing a report, which is the largest report, a research report of any of its kind. Like we surveyed 1,600 technology professionals in 2022, and about 2/3 of those were practitioners, so developers and engineers, and about 1/3 of those were C-suite executives and non-executive managers, because we wanted to more deeply understand not only how people are using observability solutions today, but what they expect to get out of observability in the future.
Absolutely. I just, again, my observation, you're much more dialed into this than I am, is what really has empowered a lot of the observability evolution has been open source tools, open source projects that have allowed us to really start, in order to do observability right, inherently you have to have a lot of data, I think, and then you have to have actionable intelligence on that data. When we look at things, around telemetry and Prometheus and stuff like that, it's really empowered a lot of this observability market to take shape.
Yeah, that's for sure. And one of the things that we're finding through this research report is that as those IT environments become more complex, you cited that open source has been an enabler of being able to give you more visibility and capture more data. But what we're finding is that as systems become more complex, our customers or the industry at large are experiencing tool fragmentation. And so they're collecting different types of data from different parts of their systems and sending it to different backends. And what they found was that there's an incredible fragmentation of not only where the data lives in these siloed experiences, but also from different job functions within your organization. So you've got your DevOps engineer who may be looking at one system, and an application engineer who's looking at a different system, and a network engineer looking at a third system. And because of those siloed experiences, when there is an outage or when there is a customer facing problem, finding the root cause of really what's going on tends to also be a fragmented experiences. And so as a result of that, we found in the survey that a terrifying number of organizations have outages more than once a week. So half of the respondents say that they have an outage more than once a week in production. And I think that we can all agree that that's far too much.
Yeah, that really is. You've referenced this report and study. Why don't we kind of formally introduce it to the audience, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Last year was the first time we conducted such a survey, and this year, and we got so much value out of it, and we published it. So this year, we decided to really double down and invest more deeply in not only the number of questions that we asked industry participants or responses, but also in the scope of the survey itself. We had over 1,600 technology professionals respond to the survey, and we've just released the full report, which is 80 pages long and chock full of all kinds of extraordinarily interesting information. And one key thing about the way that we're releasing is that we've open sourced the underlying data. So while we've generated a number of very interesting insights, we're also opening up to the world so anybody can dig into the data deeply and find their own insights.
Absolutely. What do you gave us some insights into the report, but I always find when I look at these reports, Peter, that there's usually like three big takeaways, right?
Sure.
Three things that you really can wrap your head around. One you mentioned was the fragmentation.
Yep.
Right? Can you give us maybe two others that you...
Sure. So one is just sort of the bullishness towards observability. We found that the majority of respondents indicated that they would have 90%. So we defined 7 different observability capabilities. Okay, and you mentioned earlier it used to be called APM, but now we have logs, we've got network monitoring, got all kinds of different aspects to observability. So we defined 17 of them, and we asked the survey respondents how many of these 17 observability capabilities they expect to be deployed by 2025. And over half of them said that they'd have 90% of those capabilities deployed by 2025. That's a staggering number if you think about how much that means compared to where we are today. Because only 3% of the survey respondents said that they had all 17 capabilities deployed today. So if 3% are doing it today, and over half say that 90+% will be deployed by 2025, that means that there's a lot of interest in deploying observability within enterprises. So that was the one that really jumped out at me. But the other that's kind of related is that I think one of the drivers of that is that observability has become a board level imperative, with 73% of the C-suite executives responding say that they're advocates of observability. And of those, 78% said that observability was a key enabler for achieving their core business goals. So it's not just that observability is within the engineering department, and there are some people who are responsible for uptime or interested in observability solutions, but it really is up and down the org chart for enterprise companies, including all the way up to the C-suite.
I often wonder too, the rising tide lifts all boats. And cyber security has become such a, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. It's a top priority all the way up to the board level, let alone the C-suites. And I think a good chunk of observability, or a good portion of observability, is, for right or wrong, tied into cyber. I wonder what effect that's having on raising observability's profile to the C-suite as well.
Absolutely. We're definitely seeing a shift in the way that customers are thinking about security and the way that they're thinking about observability. And we're seeing increasingly that observability vendors are offering security as baked in to the solution. So as you adopt an observability provider, it comes with security built in. We announced, in fact, this last May at our Future Stack customer conference that we have a security product that we'll be launching in the coming quarters.
Fantastic. So, Peter, I guess, tying a bow around this stuff, for our audience out here, what does it mean for them over the next 6 months, a year, right? What are these findings where are they leading us to?
I think observability is no longer an option where you can decide whether, should you have a mature observability practice or not. I think that data, including in the survey, has become very, very clear. Another number that really jumps out of the report is that we define something called a mature observability practice. So that means you've deployed all the different capabilities of observability, and you do things like proactive detection rather than reactive detection. So of those respondents that had what we defined as a mature observability practice, 100% of them 100%, every single one of them said that observability improves revenue retention because they more deeply understand customer behaviors. And so in addition to reducing the number of outages, the customer impacting outages, observability can help you understand how your customers are using your products. And you can not only improve your revenue retention, but also grow revenues by adopting observability. So that I think is a key finding, is that it's no longer optional. It's becoming a best practice. And I think customers of all sizes are starting to realize the value of observability.
Absolutely. I don't doubt that for a second. Peter, for people out here maybe who want to dig in to the report, if you have like an easy to remember URL that they could go to, otherwise if it's one of the long ones, we'll try to put it in the notes.
Sure. I think we can put it in the notes, but it's also easy to find if you just go to newrelic.com. We've got it promoted on our homepage.
Just go from there.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Anything else happening in New Relic on the news front, Peter, that you're allowed to share with us?
Well, of course, there's many things happening. What I'm particularly excited about within my department. So as we covered in the opening of this segment, part of my responsibility at New Relic is the customer experience. And we got a lot of feedback from our customers that New Relic's a great, powerful tool, but they'd love to see it be made easier to use. And so we're just a few short weeks away from launching a brand new overall New Relic experience, where I think customers will be delighted at how much easier we've made it to use from a product perspective. So I'm particularly excited about that coming soon.
Well, we're going to have you on to show us that.
Great, I'd love to.
Absolutely. Just a warning, we're going to be on the road, a whole bunch coming up. We've got DevOps World and then KubeCon and a bunch of other, we're starting to go back traveling again, and I'm looking forward to that as well. But we always have time for New Relic and you to come on. We'll schedule some time for that. Peter, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing with us the results of this report and kind of your outlook on observability. Come back, keep us posted, and continued success over at New Relic, man.
I will. And thank you very much for having me. It was always a delight to chat, and I'd love to be back anytime you'd welcome me.
Well, you have an open invitation. Just have your people talk to my people. All righty.
All right, great. Thank you.
New Relic here on Techstrong TV. Go check out their report. You can get it off the front of the New Relic site, which is, I believe, newrelic.com. And check it out. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, back here live in Austin at the Linux Foundation Open Source Summit. We've had a very security-heavy lineup this past week, and for good reason. Security is top of mind here with everyone. The Open SSF, of course, Monday was Open SSF Day, but it's been more than that. More than Monday, we really talked a lot about software supply chains and SBOMs and just securing open source software. My next guest is Krob.
Or C-Rob, whatever.
No, I had C-Rob in my mind, and that's what messed me up. Let's go back to Krob. Excuse me. I'm not sick, just had a little thing in my throat. So Krob was actually the MC of Open SSF Day on Monday.
I had an amazing hat.
You did, and you didn't wear it here.
I came from outside with tacos, and it was all sweaty.
So now we just have two bald guys here. Anyway.
Safety in numbers.
Yeah, that's true. Wear the hat next time. But anyway, first of all, Krob, welcome, man. Thank you.
It's wonderful to be here. I'm excited to have this little chat.
We are excited to have you on here. So before we jump into Monday and Open SSF Day and that whole thing, you're with Intel.
I am.
Full disclosure. What do you do in your day job?
So my day job, I am the Director of Security Communications. So primarily our function is as incidents happen, so there's a new vulnerability discovered or researchers find some report on our portfolio, I help kind of evaluate that and kind of determine how we're going to communicate it.
Love it. And your role within OpenSSF?
So I've been with the OpenSSF for over 2 years, almost from the beginning. And currently, I am the working group lead for the Developer Best Practices Working Group
Love it.
and the Vulnerability Disclosures Working Group. I sit on the Technical Advisory Committee, so we help kind of steer the strategy for the foundation. I'm on the Public Policy and Government Affairs Committee, and I'm just now the owner of 2 brand new SIGs, special interest groups underneath the working groups. So I'm in charge of the Education SIG and the
Fantastic.
Open Source CERT SIG. So we're going to create a P-CERT for open source.
That's beautiful, man. That is really, and let's talk about that cert.
Yeah.
That'll be through Linux Foundation.
Yeah, we are still, back in May, the foundation and some contributors created the mobilization plan. I'm sure people have talked about it this week. 10-point plan
Right.
trying to help respond to things like the White House executive order. And it's a plan that says these 10 different work streams we feel we can improve the security posture of open source software. And the open source CERT was stream 5. And the idea is to try to find a collection of experts from around the industry that understand how to do incident response and also understand how to get things fixed within open source communities. So we have our first meeting for the SIG the first week of July, and we're going to try to refine the initial plan and kind of spec it out and see how we want to react. But I think ultimately it's going to be kind of a mentorship program for upstream communities to teach them how to do incident response, and help them, work with security researchers and reporters, and also help make sure that they've got tools and process in place so they can be successful.
I love it.
Yeah.
It is, but let's be honest. This is a piece of work you cut out for yourself here.
Yes. One of my other groups I work with is a group called FIRST, the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams. And I'm one of the authors of the P-CERT Services Framework. So I have a little help, so I understand
So you
how vendor
fall back
security
on that,
teams-
right.
Yeah. So we're going to lean into that as kind of a model to start with and kind of see what we need to change to make it work for open source communities.
I actually love that good then.
Yeah.
When do you think we might see something on this? No pressure.
No pressure. We definitely, the meetings will be public, so all of that will go up into YouTube, so you'll be able to observe kind of the progress of the group. I expect we're going to take probably at least a month to refine the current plan and submit a proposal back to the governing board. We think this is actionable. So hopefully before the end of the year, maybe late fall, we'll actually be able to start taking action.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I got to ask you, where's the name come from?
So the name comes from Novell Groupwise.
I'm that old.
Yeah, so back in the day, our network was run by an HP VAX, but our email system plugged into the VAX, and you were limited by the characters of your name. So my name, Chris Robinson, so his first letter, first name, next 7 of your last. So I ended up being Crobenzo. And we hired a developer that walked in, and he looked at it, and he's like, Crobenzo, the chromosome.
Right.
That got shortened to Crobe.
Okay, right, very cool. So
thank
it's
you, Novell.
Chrome, not Chrome.
That's right.
Thank you, Novell is right. Man, those were interesting days. Remember that
Good.
stuff?
I love that stuff. I was a Novell engineer for many years.
That's when certs really meant something. If
did.
you were a certified Novell engineer, man, you were. Yeah. Where are they now?
Oh, they're gone.
I know.
Sad.
I think the last time I was out in Utah. Well, I was out. I think it was 2005. I was out in Utah. There was something they were working on.
They bought SUSE, and we thought that would be pretty amazing to kind of incorporate. Novell had some amazing tools.
Absolutely.
So we thought that would be
Directory.
pretty awesome. And oh my God, NDS was the best. But we were hoping that through SUSE they'd be able to channel these tools and kind of get broader adoption.
No, I think for whatever reason There's a lot of companies from back in those days, right? That we think about.
Indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, let's.
So my
Go
other
ahead.
working group. So
Oh, we have more, but wait,
do-
there's more.
We have more. So the Developer Best Practices Working Group is spinning off an education SIG. So a lot of the conference this week is talking about how we need to get more training and certification and education into the hands of developers. So again, we've created another kind of tiger team where we're going to be focusing on this. And my friend, Dr. David Wheeler, had
David
an
A.
announcement.
Wheeler.
David A. Wheeler, he had a big announcement where we have an existing body of material, the Secure Coding Fundamentals class, and he was able to transform that into SCORM. So now that anybody has a SCORM learning management system, has the ability to leverage this free developer secure software training.
Really?
Yes.
And that's the SCORM system. If you have SCORM, you can leverage this free.
Yeah, there's some rules behind it, but yeah, absolutely, it's plugged in. We're looking to get that donated to higher education, historically black colleges and universities, trade schools like DeVry. We're
Wherever
trying to
you
get
can
this
get it
everywhere.
into people's hands, that's the thing to do. So that kind of stuff gets me really excited.
Yeah,
I'll
me
be
too.
honest with you. You know, all too often we're good in the tech industry for forming a foundation and a SIG and an advisory board. But rubber meets the road when you can teach people coming up, right?
That's
So they
exactly it.
come in with the right habits, because it's harder to teach the old dogs than new chicks, right?
I can't take the class. The brain's full.
Yeah, no, I hear you, but it's not only that. Look, if you've been developing software for 25 years, and I'm going to come and tell you, well, what you're doing is wrong, and I need you to start doing it this way now, I'm going to make some progress, because no one wants to say, I know everything and I'm not changing. People don't say that. But it's just almost subconsciously, it's a lot harder.
It definitely is, and that's kind of informing our approach. So we have a traditional, about 20 hours worth of traditional class material. So we're looking at how we can transform that material into things like webinars and podcasts and maybe a boot camp. So maybe next year at the Open Source Summit, we might be able to offer a training class where you walk in, take the class, and walk out with a certification at
That would
no
be
charge.
pretty cool.
And then thinking about, we have a lot of different learners. We have, brand new students. We have people in the middle of their careers. People are making career changes. So we have to kind of serve all these different constituents. And that's absolutely, that is one of the problems, kind of the user journeys we're trying to fulfill, is this, I'm an existing developer, how do I gain new skills or refine what I have?
Let me ask you a question. So I come from the security side of the house for years and years. Nothing the matter with putting the emphasis on developers developing more secure software. But shouldn't we also be developing for security people to better secure open source software?
And the foundation itself does have it's multi-pronged. And so to help like a practitioner, we have things like our scorecard and all stars, and we have a project criticality score. And actually there was a great session just a couple hours ago by one of my peers, Jacques Chester. And it was kind of if you're a risk guy, it was kind of based off of OpenFair, which is a risk management methodology, kind of explaining how we can evaluate open source projects, share that information with downstream consumers and risk management teams or procurement teams, and kind of give them a quantitative assessment of this is what risks you could incur by these projects. So if you have two projects that do the same thing, one might have a higher or lower score, and we'll provide you the data that you could make your own assessment off of that and make your own judgment. So the foundation is also looking at just many different avenues to get this out there, focused on practitioners and developers. And hopefully by this kind of Hydra-like approach, it'll be successful. It'll stick.
You know what? You just put as much stuff on the wall, and whatever sticks, sticks, man.
Hope so.
Anyway, hey, Krob, right? I got it right?
Yep.
All right. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do, right? I mean, it's a community thing. These are not paid type of gigs,
That's
right?
for sure, yeah. No.
And I thank you for your time and efforts on that.
Thank you very much.
All right,
It's
man.
great.
Hey, keep up the great work. We're going to take a break. I think we've got another interview coming up in a moment, and we're here live in Austin.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. Cody J. Brown here from Techstrong Learning with some more upcoming programs. So top of the docket for tomorrow, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, Stack State presents Understanding the Observability Maturity Model. You will be taken through the 4 stages of observability maturity, determine the current stage of observability maturity within your own organization, and how you can move toward the next stage. But don't leave after that one. If your security risks are battling your security budget, you will not want to miss this. Doing more with less, how to improve AppSec programs when budgets decrease. Now this one will be tomorrow, Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and SciCode is joining us on Security Boulevard to discuss ways to accelerate software delivery and improve security outcomes while reducing costs. And last but certainly not least, Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern, join us for Speed Without Limits, how value stream management and tool integrations help regulated industry leaders speed up software delivery. So there are strict regulations in spaces like banking, healthcare, government, and these bog down the actions that you can take to speed up your software delivery. So if you're feeling overregulated, the path forward may lie in your tool integrations. So that is all I have for you today, but we, as always, have plenty of upcoming and on-demand programs here for you at Techstrong Learning. So stay tuned.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Innotech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Innotech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Innotech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Innotech conferences are produced by Techstrong Live and powered by Techstrong Group.
This is Techstrong TV.
Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Michael Veloki. Michael is SVP Americas Consulting, Strategy and Client Centricity with Cognizant. Welcome, Michael.
Oh, great to be here, Mitch.
Good to be talking with you. I'm really excited to kind of jump in and see what you're seeing happening in the industry. Before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit the kind of the work that Cognizant does.
So, as you said, Michael Veloki, my main job really is running Cognizant Consulting, which is a part of our business that really bridges the technology and business together. Secondarily, I look over strategy for the Americas and our client partner program. Joined Cognizant 2.5 years ago from a long career at PwC and IBM. So I like to say I'm a career consultant because it's hard to get a real job. So
you come by it honestly. So, as they say, very nice. Well, you said business and technology, so probably not news to everyone that we're really emphasizing more how technology is a strategy or part of the strategy, not a back office operational function, right? And I like to say that every executive, every leader is a technology leader, technology executive. Not that they're techie, but their job is to figure out how to leverage technology in the business and then put it to work. Fair enough?
Yeah, fair enough. No, Mitch, I see that with our executives, whether you're an HR executive or a transformation executive or a finance executive, is technology plays such a huge role in the transformation of all of our clients and actually all companies.
It really is. And I think it's more than just sort of how do we automate functions, which of course is a bit of it, but I think it's more of how do we leverage this to get a strategic advantage, whether it's offensive, defensive, go into a new market, new product, test things out, whatever it may be. It's not just run the business effectively, which it's that too, right?
Yeah, but it's also where we're going in the world is we're in a growth mode. And technology is much more of an enabler from a growth mode. And like you said, the old days was very much around that optimization component of it. But now it's around the growth and how do I get a better customer experience? How do I get a better employee experience? And as you said, how do I have, these new markets using and enabling by the technologies?
Well, I've worn a consulting hat off and on a couple times, so a little bit of a feel for where you come from. But one of the advantages you get to work with a lot of different companies. So it's oftentimes repeating with the same customers, but also exposure to multiple. What are the trends you're seeing? How are people applying this idea of, hey, I'm supposed to be doing this, or I think I have some ideas about technology, or I'm working on my strategy, come help me with the business side of it, and then we'll work on the technology. What are the patterns and the trends that you see happening with your customers and prospects?
Yeah, there's a couple of things happening, and I'll put them in two different buckets. Is one, we're seeing a lot stronger use of consulting, and when I think about consultants, what we be able to bring is an objective view, an analytical view, and that base of knowledge that you may or may not have within a company, that outside in view. And I see more of that. And I also see our consultants are much more technological savvy than they've ever been. But then from a trend perspective, it's, I alluded to a little bit, that experience piece is how do I use technology to get a better employee experience, a better customer experience? And the way we're thinking about it is strategy, experience, and technology kind of merges into one now. And the last thing I'll say is that the realm of possibilities with technology have gotten really, a lot more exponential. And we can talk about Moore's Law and all of that. But, I go back like 5-10 years ago, I was like, okay, what's this cloud thing? And now it's like, why aren't you innovating on the cloud? Why not? From a cloud perspective. And then you look at things like automation and the analytics and the data. It just feels like just a change in how we're thinking about all of our industries.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what kind of trends are you seeing for the kinds of questions or problems customers are coming to you with? Is it, I'm supposed to figure out new ways of doing digital experiences or increase the engagement with our customers, employees, and partners? Is it, competitive? Is it rebuilding supply chains? I mean, it's probably a little bit of everything. Yeah, but are there some trends that you're starting to see?
Now there are some trends, and again, I see a lot of our clients in a growth mode. Is what is it and how is it I grow? Maybe use my existing business model or a new business model or a tangential business model. So these, and I won't call them heady strategy issues. These aren't board level strategy discussions. This is truly in the operational component is what should my business model look like? And is it practical? Can I get there from here to there? So example, I'll give you around, we had a client coming in from a digital bank perspective, and they had some really great ideas. So we could break into agriculture, we can break into healthcare, And what we were able to do was bring them back to some of the practicalities of what is your brand, what experience can you provide, and what technology platform could we underpin for you going into that new business. And then have to iterate over and over again. So the thing that I see a lot of our clients focused on is that optionality. You won't ever hear me use the words future proof, because I just don't think you can future proof, but give me enough optionality so that when I'm faced with something, I know which way to go, and I can take this road or that road based on the decisions I've made.
Well, to future proof, you'd have to know what the future is going to be, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. But you'll hear consultants say that, Mitch, is I can future proof your business. Well, I don't think you actually can. And especially so what we all learned during COVID and what could have been a black swan event is, none of us could have predicted the future.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Are you mostly engaging with technology organizations, or are you more engaging with business and product lines of business organizations?
No, so we are. I mean, and one of the things I'll say is everything we do is in a lens of an industry. So if we're doing work in banking, we're doing work in retail. So we have some major industries we work in. So everything we do is from an industry's perspective. And we're seeing a blend of who we're working with, both technology and business. And one of the things that frustrated me a little bit when certain of my competitors came out and said, well, the CIO is really not important. You really need to look at the business buyer. Well, to me, it's a duality of the buyers. It's how do I bring together the business buyer with the technology buyer and bring their interests together? Because frankly, we don't see anything going from a transformation perspective unless the two of those are aligned.
Mm-hmm. Even when they're maybe initiating it at their own organization outside of IT, oftentimes There's like, I have security, I have data, I have systems I need to talk to. That's what you end up talking to CIOs, right? Yeah,
and what's interesting is the business buyers can only go so far without the technology executives, because you can't scale it, right? So I can do a little bit, but once I get to a scale, a good CEO is going to ask is, hey, does this fit our technology footprint? Because if not, it becomes really costly, Mitch, to have all these different environments floating out there.
Well, and there's also sort of strategies around how you leverage and not just build with technologies, right? So, if we have the perfect storm event and like this really takes off, and how do we scale this? And that's when you get your software architects involved and the platform engineering folks and say, great, let's build this in a way that is microservices, a Kubernetes, or it's whatever. Right to back here, you've got to have those elements too. It's not just functionality and putting it into software, right?
Wow. And I think we saw that, especially during the early days of COVID, when we moved to the virtual workplaces and we moved to, implementing large scale technology when all of us were sitting in our houses across the globe, is you had to have that industrial strength technology backbone that fit with the business purpose. And you really can't do one without the other. And that's where sometimes my frustration comes is people coming at it just one way or the other. And I think that's what I believe my consultants do especially well, is kind of do that bridge and help people to interpret and bring the business and the technology together.
You mentioned it as a bridge. It seems like a big issue, at least that I've experienced, is truly having alignment between what the business wants, where it needs to go, why it needs to go there, and do we really have? Because sometimes you sort of bolt on what you have to what you think the business wants, or vice versa. Right. And you may not actually be on a path for success, right?
Well, and I think that gets even more complicated is the complexity of, if I'm a technologist, how do I scale and how do I make it more efficient? But also from a business perspective is I've got to get value out of it. I've got to get the value out of the technology. And frankly, as you said, everybody's a technologist, but we're all at different levels, right? I mean, I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool can code something, but I can at least interpret it. So I think what I look for when we're working with clients is, can I take some of that complexity out for you? Can I help you think about things just a little bit differently, so they truly get the value out of it?
Mm-hmm. How much is speed, time to market, being able to experiment and market? Some things that we hear about that, we want to increase velocity, right? That's a term that we frequently throw around. Is that truly something business leaders are looking for? Is that nice consulting language or media language to use both of us in that sentence?
Now, I truly see it, and I'll go back to my point on optionality, is that is pointing to I've got to be quicker and faster. And I'll use the word agile, and sometimes that's a very overused word, is, agile frameworks and all that, but it truly is, how do I get, and we're seeing a lot more proof of concepts happening. And again, I don't like the word proof of concept. It's phase one. I'll do it this way. I'll learn some things. And to me, it's about continuous learning. And we're seeing a lot of our clients focused on the continuous learning from both a business process perspective and a technology perspective. Because we don't have the business process piece figured out as well, because that's changed in the new world as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious for you individually, personally, stepping into a new role a couple of years ago with Cognizant. Oftentimes you step into a role, you make some changes that are needed, you feel, for the organization. How have you had to change either the organization there, the offerings, maybe the mindset, the thinking about the kind of services that you need to offer today, as opposed to, let's say, pre-pandemic, focus on digital transformation? What's different and why?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Is to me what I had to do, and what my leadership team did was really thinking about offerings as capabilities, because what we found even in the post-pandemic world is prepackaged things aren't truly working. I need to be able to customize this. So what I really focus on is building out capabilities in say, for example, in technology. So I built out very strong cloud advisory capabilities, very strong agile capabilities, very strong kind of future technology capabilities, coupled with process capabilities. And then we kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together depending on the individual client. So I found myself having to be a lot more agile in this, that I couldn't have this cookie cutter offering and just go out and offer it to 100 clients. Because everybody was just a little bit different.
Kind of your own optionality, if you will.
Yeah, it is your own optionality. And the other thing I will bring up is from a consultant perspective, is how do you keep them engaged in this virtual world? And then how do you keep their skills at a level? Because consultants want to learn more and more. And that's why I love this kind of jigsaw puzzle, because you work on something different versus I'm going to do the exact same offering over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I know consultants like to be exposed to new things, new projects. Not, this is the 8th time I've done this, I'm kind of getting old.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What do you see as the difference? I mean, what as you look forward for the consulting industry? Where do you think we're headed, and the kind of relationships that organizations have with you? Or is it building on the optionality idea? Obviously, it's probably an easy answer, but maybe what's a little bit of a crystal ball answer?
Yeah, I think it's, and I use the word executable strategy. So I see our clients, and I think it's going to get more acute in the future as well, is this isn't a PowerPoint type of an industry anymore. It's bring me some practicality, bring me some show me in what you're bringing to me. So it's a much more practical type of a trade, which is what I welcome. I welcomed our new consultants last week, and I said, every one of you has to understand some bit of technology. Don't care if you're a business major, a strategy major, a supply chain major. You've got to understand that. So when you bring it to a client, the client can say, oh, I think this can work. So I really see consulting moving into a realm of a lot less just pure ideation and a lot more of trials and moving on and building out those first steps in an implementation.
I like your point about proof of concept, right? I've kind of learned that, you can do at best 50% planning is good. The rest is all execution because you only learn by doing it. And funny thing, customers will tell you what they like and don't.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Cognizant and your business model. My own experience running a consulting company, starting my own, was pretty quickly learned I have better people, smarter, whatever skilled people. It isn't a great value prop. You really have to have a differentiator, a value proposition. Tell us a little bit about Cognizant and how you compete in market.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I think are differentiators is one, we've got this blend of industry, process, and technology. And so our couple thousand consultants are in certain of those buckets, and a lot of them overlap. So that capability where it brings it together is a differentiator. The other differentiator for us is the people that we're recruiting and bringing in consulting are not all the same. So I am bringing in people from industry, teaching them consulting, bringing in some people who have consulting expertise and helping them with the industry. So that when you look at the diversity of our consulting, it's not a cookie cutter group of people. But again, the other thing is that we're also very clear on what we don't want to be and what we want to be, and focused on areas that we think we can be differentiated versus being a general consultancy that does everything for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Very good. What's typically the way folks engage with you? How do they get started working with you?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. Is because we're part of a broader, larger organization, we've got some wonderful sets of client partners out in the engagement. So it may be a client partner who says, "Hey, I'm living and breathing at this client. They have this issue. Can you help me with this issue?" We also have our consultants who are living and breathing at certain clients. So they will bring in that expertise based on the client issues. And at the same time, we will go out with points of view. So we're for example, we've got a extremely great point of view around payments in the banking arena. Then we go out and bring a point of view, and then our clients are saying, "Okay, how do you help me bring that point of view to life?" Because frankly, that's what we owe to the rest of Cognizant, is that practical point of view.
Well, you actually offer a different perspective. When you're inside the bubble, it's hard to see things, right, that you don't see. What is the one question or so that you customers would wish they asked if they knew to ask it, if they were challenged with projects like this? What would you say?
I think, to me, one of the the best questions that a client can ask is, how long and how fast can you help me solve the problem I have? And for us, one of our best things we can do is be an empathetic listener, is actually listen for that. And then the last thing I would say is our client should be asking, what is your perspective? Tell me what you think is wrong with my idea. Because you got to be open and honest with your client.
Kind of test those ideas, put it out there, let it stand the scrutiny or improvement that you're going to get through that scrutiny.
Exactly.
Oh, fantastic, Michael. Tell us where folks can find out more about Cognizant, learn about what you do, maybe engage you in some way.
Yep. So it's on our website, www.cognizant. There is a consulting page that you can find out there. We also have a LinkedIn Live page as well that sits under our Cognizant LinkedIn page. So, very specific to consulting.
Some good blogs and things maybe folks can follow.
Yes, yeah, a ton of thought leadership and some testimonials from our consultants, because frankly, that's where it comes to life.
Fantastic. Michael, thank you for joining us for today. I hope folks will go visit cognizant.com and learn more from you.
Okay. Thank you. Great to be with you today.
You bet.
is Techstrong TV.
The great pleasure of being joined by Chen Guarrier, who is Chief Architect and co-founder of Enso Security. Welcome, Chen.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you. We're going to talk about AppSec, API security, all kinds of good stuff. Before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and tell us what Enso Security does.
Yeah, so I'm Chen. I'm the Chief Architect of Enso Security. I'm coming from hands-on background in application security. I spend a lot of time breaking many forms of applications and different layers of the stack. Also spent some time helping organizations try to find ways to build safer applications and to run a more successful application security programs. And at Enso, we're building the ASPM, the first ASPM, Application Security Posture Management Platform. And it lets team get from all the experience that we gained through the years and start leading an organized, systematic way of doing AppSec, kind of a new way of doing AppSec, a new and improved way.
Fantastic. It's a very hot topic, but it's not an easy topic too, right? There's a lot of aspects to this. I know one of the things that you were telling me about that you've launched is this AppSec map, kind of an outline, almost looks like a subway map of the journey that you can take, where to start, how to get going. And we'll hand out the URL to that. I'll put that in the description here. Tell us a little bit about AppSec Map and how people can use this.
Yeah, so the AppSec Map is actually an initiative that we launched a while back, and it started as an effort to give a clear and simple categorization of the AppSec of offering in AppSec area. Offering that are also the combination of services, but also solutions, open source or commercial. Break them down to a few main categories that are prominent and relevant in doing AppSec. And start with just a simple visually nice engine to explore the domain and get a lot of information easily and find, for example, easy to find if a vendor that you're using also have something else to offer that maybe you don't know about. So if you search the name of the vendor, you will see all the offering that it has, that they have in the AppSec domain. And we started to get a lot of positive feedback. Also, the way that we've built this was with community contribution. So vendors were submitting their information, community users were submitting information about open source projects, and the database was built based on this data, and the engine is actually keep feeding from that data. And from all this positive feedback, we thought, what would be more useful using this data? And then we've decided to add a layer of personalization. And this is this new update, and we call it My Map. And it's to take almost the same data and to arrange it in a way that is maybe similar to how we perceive application production in a DevOps kind of picture. We all have a mental image of DevOps when we think about production environment and the software production process. So we've arranged it in a similar view. When you have your right-hand side shows your dynamic environment, your left-hand side show more the production of the code, the part that is about the code and the open source dependencies, and then arrange around it all the solution that you're using. And with this information, the map can give you, first of all, some sort of visualization on how much have you progressed in terms of instrumenting services, solutions, or processes that you need in order to protect applications. And also shows you what would be a relevant next step, just in a very user-friendly kind of easy journey. And it is meant to help in perceiving the fact that the challenge in AppSec is a journey. It's something that you start and you do. And in reality, once you bring a solution, you face some other problems that you need to think about. And the app is about helping people engage in this forward-thinking kind of a way when we talk about AppSec.
Yeah, if it was only just an IDE extension plugin or, put this in your CI/CD, you're all good. We wish it was that easy. I'm curious, what do you find people struggle the most with when it comes to application security or API security for that.
Yeah, so I think that it all stems from the fact that building safe software is very, very difficult. It's not something building software is difficult, building functional software is difficult, and error tolerant software is difficult. And building a safe software in large scale, secure software in large scale is very difficult. And it all starts from this. It was also very difficult to build a safe infrastructure, but we've done a lot of the cybersecurity community, done a lot of work on securing infrastructure, and everybody were busy with it. But in the meantime, applications were also growing up in complexity and in features and the kind of things that they can do. And it became it was and it still is a very, very complex process to actually secure an application. And what many people are actually struggling in the bottom line is not the instrumenting automated tests, and sometimes not even executing manual tests. But in many cases, it's in taking this data back to the development organization in a way that will make sense to them and will inspire them to actually make some meaningful changes. And this is where most teams are struggling, even if they instrumented their tool chain across the DevOps pipeline, and they're fully DevSecOps, and they have some shift left campaigns. They're still struggling with it because this is actually the real struggle: is to help the development organization build an application that is safer from the ground up, and not by just patching this problematic dependency or maybe the specific tiny alert. It's a big picture kind of thing.
I like to describe it as you don't bolt on airbags after the car leaves the factory. It's got to be built in, right?
Exactly.
It's like AppSec is the same way. It's built in or it's not.
Not to mention brakes, yes?
Yeah. Well, those brakes, we should add those too. Let's figure that out. We should do that before we drive the car. So API security is really a hot topic as well within AppSec. And I know in your AppSec map, you talk about, inventorying your software, inventorying the code. And, and of course, that's one of the first steps in API security is, especially in an API first kind of environment, is we're moving to more API centric microservices and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's proliferation of APIs is very, very vast. It seems like that it can't be a static step, though. It can't be like, let's go inventory our stuff and then we'll leave it alone and go back and look in 6 months. Well, if you're doing cloud native development and DevOps, you probably have changed API, your own stuff, more or less the things that you're using, dozens, maybe hundreds of times, in a month or 2 or 6. So it's got to be a rolling process. It's got to be built in to your workflow pipeline, correct?
True, and in fact, in many places it is built in, but by developers for their perspective. And in application security, we're still struggling to acquire the same level of observability on the software that our teams make. In fact, much of the data is already there. You have to continuously process it. Soon enough, everybody will be required to, because everybody that is trading software or service based on software to some level will be required rightfully to present a bill of material of that software. And yes, it must be automatic. It must be instrumented the same way. The logic is very basic. If you want to protect something that is being automatically generated, created, with many tools, you need the same level of automation into looking at it and into understanding where are the problems. Another point is that to acquire this data is not going to be as straightforward as it is for developers, because developers plan a technology stack. They can plan those things dedicated for that technology stack from the get-go, because they need observability, they need monitoring, and they will build it inside. But they will not consider the use case of security that needs this for each development stack that has inside the company. They need to see the wide picture. They can't just be very focused on one technology stack and see it properly, but not see the rest. The developers have this visibility. Security are getting this visibility now with platforms like ours, because they are tapping into the same data sources, but they're bringing in this information in a more wide manner that give visibility to everything.
Very good. Well, we talked about the AppSec map. We talked a little bit about sort of the journey and building security in from the start, right, into the process. Tell me a little bit more about Enzo Security, what you do and how you fit into this kind of ecosystem of AppSec.
Yeah, so our mission is to bring the same level of automation and ease of operation that exist in engineering to application security. Our platform is designed to be able to measure security posture of a full software factory. If you're building software, if you're operating software, you have many questions that needs to be asked about across your entire factory about the different assets that you're building. And our platform automates the process of understanding those assets, gathering the security intelligence around these assets. So security intelligence that combines the perspective of what kind of a security effort was already deducted. So what kind of test I performed on that specific asset, what kind of activity I conducted from security perspective, what do I know about existing alerts, and then also put it in the context of what is the meaning of this asset. This is a fundamental data plane that the platform provides. And on top of it, there are many features to either pull more data, generate more tests, automate workflows like a creation of tickets and these kind of features to take this data and start distributing it around the organization in the most effective way.
It sounds like you're not sort of like a point solution as part of AppSec, but almost kind of a management platform of you do AppSec through the whole process. Is that a good description?
Yeah, it's to bring the concept of asset management and posture management into application security, basically. So the first fundamental step is inventorying and creating a notion of asset inventory, and then all the rest of the actions followed on that inventory. In the context of that inventory, with the understanding of which assets are more important. So it's an asset management solution for application security domain, basically.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great talking with you. It's as I said, it's a rich topic and very, very topical, hot one, right? So I promised we'd give out the URL to check out the AppSec map, and that's actually what it is, appsecmap.com. So go there. That's the free tool, the free sort of almost directory kind of ecosystem and roadmap. And then as you were talking about, click on My Map and you'll kind of build from there, right? Create your own, your customized guide through the process. Tell us, so where do we find out more about Enzo Security?
When do we, what was the question?
No, what's the URL for folks to go check?
So okay, so Enzo Security, so enzo.security.
Okay, enzo.security, ENSO. Yes. That's easy.
Yes,
hopefully we can remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, Chen, it's been a very great pleasure talking with you. Chen Gourarier, who is Chief Architect and Co-founder with Enzo Security. Hope you're coming back soon.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
You bet.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Klaus Jepsen, who is CTO for Unit 4, and we're going to be talking about DevOps and where are we in the maturity curve, because it's been a long haul. Klaus, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
We've been advocating the adoption of best DevOps practices to be kind for a decade or more now. Some may, depending on how long you've been at it, maybe even close to 2 decades. All depends on your perspective on when you got started. And yet, adoption is uneven. So what do you perceive to be the challenges when it comes to DevOps that we're wrestling with today? And for that matter, might we ever actually be done?
That's a great, well, yeah, I think we will. I think it's always with these changes, right? There's the part of it that had to do with the technology or processes, how you set things up, and the other thing is the human element, right? And the human element is always hard to change, right? There's also I think been a lack of sort of getting to understand what is DevOps really all about, right? So DevOps is not it's a mindset. It's sort of how do you infuse an understanding of the challenges of operating your software into the engineering processes. And a lot of companies they have a background, and that background was typically in building software that went into some on-premise data centers, and you weren't really responsible for operating the software. You were just responsible for providing the software itself, and it was somebody else's problem. So when the SaaS revolution, or SaaS or cloud or whatever we want to call it, came about, it became obvious that you also need to operate the software. And then what happened was that, okay, we need to, and then somebody coined the term DevOps. And then the way a lot of companies took that thing away was to create a department called DevOps. So, okay, now we are DevOps, we have somebody who operates the software, and then we have engineering, and then we call this DevOps. So there was like 2 different departments still. So there was not really any key understanding in each of these groups. What does it mean from the construction of the software and to run it? And also, what are we doing here in Ops to sort of make sure that the engineering really understand the challenges we have by operating it? So the first sort of iteration of this became what I call, I refer to it in a blog called the bridge. So you have so what we did then was we created the bridge, which then got the label DevOps, right? So you have engineering, DevOps, and then a bridge we call DevOps. And then you put some people in there, and their job became sort of making sure everything aligned, that they may be looking at the pipelines, making sure everything is okay. They have participants for each group. But it was still a separate sort of discipline, if you wanted. You have the engineering discipline and you have the operation discipline. And that's where I think that's where a lot of companies are today. They still haven't really crossed the bridge, if you want. And crossing the bridge means that you merge these functions. And I think a lot of companies have done it, but I still think there's a lot of companies that haven't done it yet. And I don't know why, but the merge of these functions actually means that it's back to this, this saying about you build it, you run it. And that bridge, I think, is very far away from a lot of engineering teams, is the fact that now you need to operate it, which means that engineering have to get used to the thought that we are also responsible for running it. And until you become responsible for running it, I don't think a lot of engineers and engineering teams really think a lot about observability, traceability, logging. How do you make sure it runs every time? But as soon as you get this call Saturday morning at 2:00 and your software doesn't work, then your perspective on how you build your software, how you make it resilient, how you make it observable, and how you make it predictable becomes important points on your roadmap. And these are elements that needs to go on the roadmap. And this is where, if you look at a traditional software company, it breaches out to the product people as well, right? Because that's also a change that needs to happen. Because previously in many companies, product organization concerned themselves with feature functions to the customer who paid for the stuff, right? However, when you move into a service world, your customer demography changes, because Now your users are also the people who runs the stuff, right? So it's not just the one who pays the subscription fee, but you also have a huge part of group internally who need to be satisfied because they need feature functions in there, which means that all of a sudden you need to allocate engineering capacity to build observability into the application. You may have to build monitoring portals into the application such that your support people, your operations people, and everyone can go and get a quick look and understand how is the software really doing, right? So, and I think, where are we today? There's a lot of bridging going on. I think if you look at it, a lot of companies still have this sort of dual approach, and then they have the bridge in the middle. And then there is this internal debate going around, oh, is this a non-functional requirement? So who is responsible for functional and non-functional and all these kind of good stuff? And at the end of the day, a requirement is a requirement. You need to get it done. It doesn't matter if it's a non-functional or functional requirement. It doesn't matter how the user perceives it or not. It is about how do you get these topics that is typically not really of interest to the end user, where the end user is the customer, but it's a very interesting topic for the end users, where the end user is the internal operations. And that realization is, at least my experience, won't happen unless you take the final step, which is removing the bridge and essentially merging all these functions such that each of the teams working on services or whatever they're working on, they own all aspects from birth to actually running requirements, the non-functional requirements, look specifically at the user demography, the end users themselves, the internal users, and ensure that these things actually gets on the roadmap and built. And I think we are sort of, you said a decade probably makes sense, but we have been slowly progressing, and we are now sort of in the bridge area. And I think going forward, we'll see more and more companies sort of getting to this realization they need to merge these functions. Yeah.
I think some of the challenge is, part of this so-called shift left mentality, but the developers themselves are not jumping up and down to say, we want to run all this stuff. Some do, they're called full stack, but the majority of the developers are not full stack, and frankly, may not even be interested in being full stack developers. So how do we accomplish this bridge when there's an element of the community that's not that excited about it? And then frankly, there are software engineers working in DevOps teams that manage operations that don't want to give up control of that anyway. So maybe we're perfectly happy where we are.
Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't say that's not a true statement, but my strong belief is that if you realign your team such that it's at the end of the day, a lot is about, for example, if you go through a change process, it's also to change the organizational structure, everything, how you work on it, how you govern it, to match the reality you want to go to. So if you make it whoever it is responsible for these aspects, and you then add the capabilities into the group, because it's different. So the way I look at it, and it may be wrong, and people may disagree. For me, it's disciplines within engineering, right? Some write code, some test code, some run code, but it's all in disciplines within engineering, and the responsibility for all those disciplines within engineering sits in one team. So the team themselves are responsible for it. Within that team, you may have different people who with different skills, who's interested in different things, which means that you can have if you have a big team, teams are 6 to 12 people, there may be one or two sort of more engineers with sort of automation and ops specific background looking at what does it take to run it. And they make sure when sitting with the table that these requirements are taken serious as part of building the product or service. More so, it's called service than products today. And then you have to include the engineers as well, because they need to understand that if you don't take these things into consideration, what you risk happening is that you're going to get a phone call Saturday morning at 2:00, right? Because the service is down, and where are they going to go? They go to you and ask you to fix it, right? And I think the interesting thing, if I look at it, I think to your point around some people are pretty satisfied. I think there's more and more talent coming out that has been through this. I think there's sort of the different if you look at your engineering population, depending on your engineering organization, you of course have a spread in terms of tenure, and seniority. But what we definitely see is that there is if you take sort of the younger entrant into the market, they are more attuned to this way of working, right? They're more sort of used to it because that's what they read about, that's what they see. Many of them they don't know the past, essentially. So it's just what it is, right? So one way you, of course, could solve it is, but also thinking about what are the talent you have in your company, right? So who do you hire? How do you foster this internally, making sure that your talent grow towards this goal? So it's sort of a dual thing. It's not just about taking what you got and convert it. It's also making sure that the new people who's getting into the organization is already have visibility or touch this kind of thinking, which can drive this change through the organization. Because otherwise, that's what I said. The human element is the hard. So the human element is always the hardest part of any transformation, right? Period. And we can argue forever about that, but that's just how it is. So how do you get them on this journey? I think you get them on this journey by adding new people into the teams who understand how this works, and you sort of also make sure that engineering don't feel that all of a sudden they just get this responsibility dumped on them without having sufficient knowledge of people around them to help them through this change, right? So that's what I mean by merging the teams, because the ops team knows. So they need to go in the teams. I don't know, some company may say, oh, we don't need ops, engineering do everything, and you're a host, right? Because then I think you're running directly into what you're saying. We don't want to do this, right? And it may not that we don't want to do it. It may be that we don't really know how to do this. We don't know what it means because we never written any software that was supposed to be operated by ourselves.
It's clear that developers need more accountability, and it's also clear that many of them don't want to be so dependent upon the back-end operations to execute a small change, and they want more control. The challenge seems to be that the developer community itself is divided over to what degree they want that level of control. And so do you think that this is a generational issue and, anybody over 30 just doesn't get it?
That's probably a little harsh. So I wouldn't say it that way. I think if I look at my own organization, which is fairly large, I don't think I can say there's a specific age or anything. I think it's in general, sort of, if I look at the changes we have gone through, and it's taken us quite some time, to be quite honest, to get where we are today. Today, everyone understands that this is the way we want to go, right? So it has taken a lot of changes, organizational changes along the way, and the key is to structure your engineering such that it's capable of doing it, and also making sure that the engineering have sufficient autonomy, accountability, and responsibility, right? So it sort of leaks into something, bridges into something else, or segues into sort of like, are you a top-down or are you a bottom-up organization? How do you build stuff, right? How do you make sure who decides what gets constructed, who builds the roadmap, and who runs the execution? And I'm a strongly believer that the further down in the organization you push this autonomy, the better you are off, right? Because then the teams themselves feel that they have a common responsibility and they have a common goal, which is essentially to get software or service in the hand of the customer. And at the end of the day, I don't know any engineer or anyone who don't want customers to use their stuff or their services and product. That's why we do what we're doing. We love it when there's actually users on our artifacts. We don't love it if it just sits on the shelf, it's not used. But I do believe that in order to get people to change the mindset, you also need to inject, I think, talent, people who've been there, done that, understand how this is supposed to work, and then can influence the rest of the group. Otherwise, and make sure that they have the capability to be successful. There's nothing worse to be set up to fail. And if groups feel they're set up to fail, like the drastic case, we take all ops out, it's a generic problem, they're set up to fail, why bother? So I think it's more about creating the environment, the framework, give the time, because it takes time, right? So if you have a big legacy application or anything like that, everybody knows the ins and outs. They know exactly where to go to push, and they can fix things. And then all of a sudden, you put it into something that's completely different. It's unpredictable. They don't know where to start. It just takes longer. And you need to accept that things take longer. If you keep the pressure on and believe everything is like it was yesterday, and now I'm talking management part of it, you're going to get pushback because honestly, you're asking them to do things they've never done. Guess what? That you move from development to research, which means we don't know what we're doing because that's research. But you go from this, I know exactly what happens when I hit the compile button until I have no idea what's going to happen when I hit a new project button. So you need to let the teams learn this new approach while they're building new services as well. So it's sort of a dual thing.
So the minute you have two teams, you're always going to have an us versus them kind of mindset. But we have a third team now. Security people want to be part of the process. So where does that fit in? How do we address this whole DevSecOps thing? Or should we even be calling it DevSecOps because security is just part of the motion?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think the security is many things. There's all the security in the infrastructure you run. But I think the key thing about security is that you need to work with the engineering teams to make secure programming a part of sort of the internal mindset that you always think through. You need to make sure you have the right tools in place to constantly monitor. There's a lot of tools, a lot of great products that can go in and do continuously security testing on your software and your build pipeline. And then you again need to work and make the engineering teams understand that this is a key point. I don't know how others have done it, so I can tell you how we did it. So there's probably sort of so we made it, so as part of the your development phase, you have exit criteria for when you can deploy, and then there are something that needs to be satisfied. We also have good to go criteria when you can start developing, where there's a lot of criteria that need to be done. So the way we ended up doing is that we run them very stringent. So we have a quality group that makes sure that, and actually an DevOps kind of group that makes sure that all these criteria are fulfilled before you can deploy. And a lot of these criteria can be automated, so they sit in a pipeline, and if something goes wrong, it's just going to turn red, and you cannot deploy to production. And that, and initially, that made a lot of pushback, right? Because people, well, you can fix it tomorrow or whatever. We know this is wrong, but no, you cannot do that because then you go back to the other thing. You're going to get a call Saturday morning at 2 a.m., right? So that's the way we did it. So we put it in and made it more stringent. Our exit criteria are more firmed up and more stringent. And that goes around security as well. So you need to pass all the gates in order to deploy. So I think where I would at least personally fuse the security part is into the quality, because it's a quality, in my view, and this may also be a sort of interesting view, but I would say that sits more in, it's about, security is about the quality of the product. Well, how secure it is, well, it's the quality of the product. So it needs to be in that area of the organization. So you should probably put your security people into the quality to make sure that the quality folks get it on the agenda and get it into the criteria, right? That way you can then make sure that the code you ship. Then, of course, you have all the sort of firewalls and everything around it, which is sort of more on the infrastructure security, where they're already heavily involved and have been for years, actually. So but it's more, again, this mindset change, with you build it, you run it, you build it and you run it, you build it secure and you run it in a secure environment, right?
Mm-hmm. What's your best advice for achieving all of that? Do I just take everybody, throw them in a room and lock the door and see what comes out? Or is there a smarter way to think about, gently pushing these people in the right direction?
Patience. No, but it takes a long time. It's taken us quite some time to get to this mode. But first of all, we had to shift our product into the cloud, and as long with shifting the product into a multi-tenant product from a legacy single-tenant product, we also had to build this new organization structure. We had to get firmed up on all the DevOps elements. How do we make sure that works perfect? Going to continuous delivery. So that's taken quite some years, to be honest. And I think I don't think there is my basic assumption is that everybody want to be successful, and everyone would like to be able to deliver their work to customers, and then you sort of put the autonomy into the teams, but then my recommendation is to put some governance function around it, so that make sure that you govern the quality, you govern the sort of the project, how it runs, you govern the pipelines and the element of deployment, and you govern the architecture. But they are then external from the development teams themselves, so they act as governance functions, right? And I think there's a lot that companies that set it up this way. So you sort of have a quality governance function, but you have quality and testers in the teams. You have an architecture that makes sure you build it the right way, and they're not in the teams. They sort of sit around the teams, making sure it goes on track. And you have the project people guiding the projects through the different stages of the life cycle, depending on how long your sprints and everything are, right? That's at least how we did it, and it worked. And so that's the only reference I got. I would do it again the same way, to be honest.
How do you maintain that once you achieve it? Because you talk to a lot of people and they think of it as almost like an event rather than something that has to be maintained on an ongoing basis. And I think that you're never quite done when you're on DevOps, because every day is a cultural cohesion conversation on some level.
But you maintain it. How do you maintain? It's not an event, right? It's a journey. So as I said, it's taken us years to get to this, and you're right. It's never going to end. You can always refine it. But I think that at the point when you're at the point where you have all your services clearing the pipelines, you have all the observability in there, so you know that everybody thinks about how do you run it. You have you can see on your logs that services self-heal essentially if something goes wrong. So engineering thought about, okay, if my service go down, how do I get it up and running? You can see that there is you move to it's sort of like immutable deployment as well, right? I think that's key. We didn't even touch on that topic, but I think that's something people are forgetting as well. When you see all these things, you see all these different threads coming together, then I think it becomes business as usual. That's how we do things, right? I don't think it's going to go away again. Why would it go away again? I don't think so, because that's how you work. It's changing from the change from building an MSI installer and distribute it on a CD or DVD, if you're old, or a floppy disk, and to the fact that there's only one version running at any given time in one production environment, and it needs to run 24/7 and never go down. When you made that journey, I don't think it's going to go. I haven't seen any indication that it stops acting that way at all, right? Not at all. That's how we work.
So you mentioned immutable platforms. We're talking a lot lately about software supply chains and the integrity of those supply chains and how do we maintain that. What do you think will be the ultimate outcome of that conversation as it applies to DevOps? Do we need to tweak those processes somehow or other to achieve that goal, or are we just there and it's unevenly distributed and most people don't realize how to actually do it?
I don't think. I think from the if I understand the question correct, I think if you think about the, I'm not sure it's completely understand the correct question, but I think if the immutability and your deployment runs as immutable and you only roll forward, then nobody's gonna notice that you are patching or anything like that. That's the point, right? I don't think, and if you build your processes, or you need to change some of your processes to allow for this, right? Because if depending on your service, the size of what you're trying to deploy, some of this is there's microservices, microservices, and nanoservices. If you have big services, then it can be hard to sort of always come out with a complete service every time. So you need to adjust your processes to provide minor upgrade, and you need to sort of refine those such that you can deliver more continuously throughout whatever period of time you want to do that, including patches. But if you only allow for rolling forward and it's always immutable, then you will need to adjust your processes to accommodate for that. So, for an example, you have specific times a week where you can get a hotfix in. You have specific times a month where you can get a minor release in. You have specific times a year you roll out a major release. And that just becomes the way you operate, and your processes get adjusted to this. Yes, so you need to adjust it, because you can't just go in and remove one DLL or whatever jar file, depending on the technology, and put another one in. That's not going to fly, right? That's not going to fly in a mutable system or in infrastructure as code. Everything is immutable, and you need to order your processes to follow it. And it means you have some gates in terms of what you want to accomplish. So that's the way we think about it. So we set it up such that for depending on the services, the size, we always roll the whole service if it's a small service. So if there's a patch, it's a new service we roll in. If it's a larger service, we can break it into major, minor, and patches. Patches can be rolled out twice, and minor can be rolled out when needed, and major every quarter is rolled out, essentially.
All right. Hey, Klaus, thanks for being on the show. Clearly, DevOps is a state of mind, not a platform, and we need to go from there. But thanks for sharing your insights.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
All right. Back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Adam Frank, who's Vice President of Product Management for Armory.io, and we're talking about the rise of continuous delivery as a service, and then what's going on with Spinnaker. And these two things are kind of orthogonal to each other, but we'll see how things go from here. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Always a pleasure having me on here.
So what is the level of adoption been of the CD as a service platform that you guys launched before we get into Spinnaker? And what are people saying about that? You've been at it, I think, since June. So where are we?
That's right. Pre-June, we had a design partners program that we had spun up to really give some early access to some customers of ours and some new customers of ours. So that program went very, very well. We saw, a few different size companies, anywhere from small to medium, and a couple of our larger enterprises really starting to leverage CD as a service. And then we launched it early June of this year. And since then, we've continued to see momentum take off. I think there's a real place in the market for people that want continuous deployment as a service and not have to install anything within their environment. So we've gotten really, really great feedback this far.
Are there any patterns in the types of customers that lean towards consuming CD as a service versus those that want to do it themselves?
I think one of the patterns that we are definitely seeing are companies and organizations that really want to just focus on their core competency. They want to invest in more engineering and more resources that are solely focused on their core competency. So they'll leverage SaaS solutions like ours, in this case, CD as a service, to make sure that we as a continuous deployment company are focusing on our core competency and delivering that service to them so they can focus on their core competencies. I think, we've talked to a number of these customers, and they could have done it. It could have taken significant resources. It could have taken significant time. So they certainly did not want to focus on that and just wanted to focus on their business. And I think that's the common theme there.
Right. In the meantime, you guys are still investing in Spinnaker, right? And that's a whole other platform that stands apart from this one. So when do people lean towards Spinnaker versus a CD as a service platform, or will Spinnaker eventually be delivered as a service as well? Where are we on that journey?
Sure. So Spinnaker has been around for a number of years, and we've seen and we continue to see really large enterprises and really elite development teams leverage the power of Spinnaker, the power and that flexibility. So we're still seeing that trend. We're still seeing a lot of large enterprises, a lot of deployments, a lot of deployment frequency, that are really looking to scale out their deployments. I mean, we've got customers that have thousands of deployments per day, thousands of developers running on the platform. So we do see the community continuing to grow. I mean, there's a few hundred installs a month that we see. There's so many more contributions that we see within the community. So people are continuing to leverage Spinnaker as that, but it's definitely on the larger enterprise side of things. Whereas we're seeing people that are more focused on Kubernetes and looking for that simpler declarative type offering that are looking then at CD as a service with us.
Do you think CD as a service will expand the number of organizations that embrace best DevOps practices because it becomes more accessible?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. I mean, the more accessibility or the more accessible these types of things are, like we were saying in the beginning there, people can focus more on their core competencies and start to have an easier time when it comes to DevOps as a whole. So the DevOps platforms that we see platform engineering teams starting to build out, especially the ones that are leveraging CD as a service on our side, they tend to be able to focus more time and build out different services for their engineering team and their businesses. So there's a lot of success, a lot of merit there.
For years, we used the term CI/CD as if it was one integrated thing, when in reality it was a lot of CI and maybe a very little CD. Is that changing? And what is the relationship between CI and CD? How tightly coupled are these things going to be going forward?
I think so. I definitely think so. Like you said, it was a lot of CI and very little CD. We saw back, we still see it out there quite a bit. You'd have a lot of CI and some, a lot of scripting and things like that are built onto it to do some type of little deployment. But as people are investing more in service reliability and service assurance, security, things of that nature, really looking forward to delivering a solid customer experience, they start to look at their deployment strategy and how we can leverage advanced deployment strategies like your blue-green, your canary, automated impact analysis to really help with that customer experience. So there's point solutions like CD as a service that we are offering that do deliver that for them. They're very, very tightly coupled. I mean, CI is heavily focused on the build and test aspects of everything. So you do have that artifact to deploy. And then deployment, of course, is focused heavily on deploying those artifacts and making sure that they're deployed in a safe and reliable manner out to your customers, so you can continue to deliver that solid customer experience that you and I as customers are expecting with the software that we use.
Do you think that becomes easier to achieve because in a Kubernetes environment, at least, there's a consistent set of APIs, and one of the things that's held us up in CD is that every platform up until then was its own little snowflake. So there wasn't a lot of consistency. So people just relied on a lot of manual effort.
I think Kubernetes as a whole has really taken its foothold as the number one orchestration platform. So it's becoming more widely known. It's becoming certainly more widely adopted. And there is a lot of really great power when leveraging Kubernetes. So this has really allowed us as a company to deliver a solution that's focused on the deployment to Kubernetes. But there's lots of other services out there that people are still leveraging. There's lots of serverless services as well that people are leveraging. So there is certainly need to deploy out to these services as well, and we'll continue to see it evolve. And I'm excited to see where Kubernetes and kind of the next iteration of all this continues to evolve as well. But we'll always have deployment needs, and those deployment needs will continue to be at the forefront of everybody's business and strategy going forward.
Do you think we're at some seminal moment in time where people are looking at their legacy approaches to DevOps and they're seeing the rise of microservices, Kubernetes, different kinds of workflows, more concern about everything from security to how the whole software supply chain is maintained from an integrity perspective? And are people taking a moment now and saying, hey, now's the time to rethink our whole approach and kind of modernize that? I mean, we have some organizations that are running the same platform for close to a decade now, right?
I think so. I do. I really do think so. I mean, we're seeing customers approach us at this point, and we're evaluating what they've done with them and partnering what they've done with them. And like you said, it's a platform that's 10 years old at this point. And when you've got a 10-year-old platform that you've homegrown within your organization, there's going to be a lot of different pieces in that to it. And that eventually becomes pretty convoluted and fragile. So people are absolutely looking at that. And DevOps, now I think people are really starting to embrace it as a culture. Whereas before it was just, are you working in a DevOps manner? Are you working in an agile manner? And it's not just an agile manner and a framework that you are working in, but it's really embracing it as a culture to help bring development and operations closer. So you are delivering a better customer experience and making your developers' lives easier and really leveraging a lot of automation in there as well.
What does it take to get people to have that realization to move forward? Because sometimes I think we make a decision 4 or 5 years ago, and it was the right decision at the time, but the technology moves on, but we never revisit that earlier decision because we kind of get wrapped up into the inertia of the platform and the process. So when is that aha moment when people go, you know what, I got to rethink this whole thing top down?
I think when it comes down to efficiencies, and you've got two things you're really focused on, you're delivering that customer experience and making sure that your developers are enabled to deliver that customer experience. So when the developers are really lacking a lot of efficiencies and there's just so many pain points in what they're doing, there's still manual steps or things just aren't working. If you interview any developer out there, they'll tell you that they just want deployments to work. They want to get down and write their code, and they just want deployments to work. So I think the aha moments really come into consideration when things just get too frustrating, or the customer experience is really starting to be hindered by the fragility of the platform that has been built.
What do you think the relationship between developers and the rest of the DevOps teams is going to be like going forward as we get CD right? Because a lot of developers, some want to control the entire stack. Others just want to write code and hand it off to somebody else. So what's going to be the right mix over time? Is this going to be some sort of continuum?
That's a great question. That is a very great question. I think what we're seeing is exactly like you said. We've got kind of two different types of personas there. You've got somebody who really just wants the deployment to work, and they've got everything facilitated there for them. So they're writing their code, they're committing that code, and that deployment is working. And then you've got some other folks who are kind of embracing a little bit more of that control and want to understand a little bit of the underlying infrastructure and piping, as it were. So I think we'll continue to see that for quite some time. I think platform engineering as a whole is becoming a lot more popular, but we'll continue to see that. And I think what we've done with CD as a service certainly is focus on that developer experience, so they can understand the underlying piping, the underlying infrastructure, but it's also still easy to them. So not only can they understand it, but it is easy to them, as well as making it easy for that platform engineering team to serve up the services to them, the APIs to them, so they can leverage it. And like I said, just commit their code and really have a tightly coupled, back to the CI and CD, using GitHub Actions as an example. Fantastic CI. We'll plug right into GitHub Actions, commit your code, and then that's going to completely take care of the deployment as well.
Almost sounds like we're at the fork in the road where we have a DevOps light option and a DevOps heavy option, and you can pick either one. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
That's not a bad way to look at it. Yeah, that's not a bad way to look at it.
All right. So what's your best advice to folks in terms of how to make that decision and get started down one path or the other?
I think depending on how large your team is, you really want to make sure that, again, we've said it here a couple of times, you're focusing on your core competency. You're not spending a lot of time building out a CD solution, a CI and CD solution, when your business is to build out another type of software or service for customers. So I think make sure you're leveraging something like CD as a service that just makes your life easier.
All right. The DevOps journey is never quite done. Adam, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right. Back to you guys in the studio.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had a fantastic set of interviews today from some of the biggest names in tech to give you the inside scoop. We'll be back again on Thursday, so we hope to see you then. And in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.